Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ascend Financial Wellness's budgeting module. My name is Brian Foltis, and I am the owner and founder of Ascend Financial Wellness. And I'm also an associate professor of finance at Butler University in Indianapolis, Indiana. So today we are going to get started. Now, many of you have a preconceived notion of budgeting, and I just want to let you know we're going to do this together. We will get through this. So if you've seen the previous module called Financial Psychology, you would have identified yourself on a scale of 0 to 7, between 0, a free spirit, and 7, a nerd. And so I suspect that the nerds are going to be okay with this budgeting module. And so free spirits, I need you to hang on with me because it's just as important to get these finance numbers on paper. And so we're going to work on this together. Everyone's going to move forward together. So here's what we're going to do today. Set our personal scoreboard or budget. We're going to come back to the financial goals that we set out to accomplish in our financial psychology module, and we're going to apply it to the budget. So now we can get more specific and more concrete in those budgeting goals. And then we're going to try to set some proper budgeting expectations because we don't want the budget to be a bully in our lives. This is going to be here to help us and to guide us, and we don't want to keep this in a negative context. Okay, so that's what we're going to work on here in this module. So, like we said, our budget is like our scoreboard on how we are doing with our finances. Most of us pretend we don't want to pay attention. We look away. And we're basically doing our finances without a scoreboard. The game of life without playing by any score. So we don't know if we're winning or if we're losing, by how much. We don't know if we have a good defense or if we have a good offense. Like none of that is known when we don't have a budget. So here's why we do it. We're going to determine if we're winning or losing by how much. We need to take a picture of our finances in order to determine where we go from here. And then we're going to look for areas to improve, but that's not until later. Today is all about just trying to set some of the numbers, and we're going to relax. We're not going to be so rigid about all these numbers and what they mean and if we hit our numbers or not. Like I said in the other module, this is more organic. We're going to have to roll with the punches a little bit more, but we're all going to continue to move forward, not backward. And this is our first step to setting our base foundation. So if you think about this in sports, believe it or not, I played professional basketball over in Europe, college basketball, obviously. And so I was the point guard, and so I always thought of myself as a shooting point guard, which I always like to shoot. And my teammates know that I would never pass it to them because I always like to shoot. And my defense was just good enough to not get pulled out of the game. So I never had a great defense, but my defense was okay. My offense was pretty good, enough to stick around for at least 3 years over in Germany playing basketball. And so think about this in your finances where you have offense. Maybe you have a really good job that has high income. So that's a high powered offense. And so your defense is also your expenses. So do you have high expenses or low expenses? And so what I want you to think about is what kind of team are you? So what kind of scoreboard does this look like? Are you just like a Red River shootout kind of team where you've got really good offense, but your defense is just not that good, and so you just have high scores on both sides? Or do you have a very low offense that you need exceptional defense to win? And so everyone's going to be different, but obviously what we're going to be trying to do here, what we're going to try to do is increase our offense or try to maximize that as much as possible. And then we're going to really work on focusing on defense in order to win. Championship teams, what is their common thread? It's defense. They all play great defense. Everybody remembers Michael Jordan for his offense, but it's the defense that wins championships. So we say, play great defense. That's what we all can control. We're all going to have different income levels, but I feel like we can all control our expenses and our defense to a certain extent. And then we're striving for a high quality and dependable offense at the same time. All right, so here's how the budgeting worksheet works. If you go on to extendfinancialwellness.com, you'll be able to pull up your own budgeting worksheet. So you can grab that, rip it into an Excel sheet or a Google sheet of your own, and you can get started right away on this. The first step is the fun part. This is the income part. So you and your spouse, or if you have an additional income, you will put your money, your paycheck numbers in the following categories: your yearly salary, your paycheck frequency. If you do any retirement contributions, we're going to put that in percentage form, and then whatever your net paycheck is each paycheck. So if you get paid every other week, and the money that goes direct deposit into your account is $2,400, that's your net paycheck. If you need to work back how much money you make per year, you do those numbers, but you're going to add these four numbers, and your monthly pay, your monthly income is going to be calculated. If you have variable income, what we're going to try to do is just do your best to come up with an estimate, but you're going to probably want to shoot a little bit on the low side, because ideally what we'll do is if you have a low week or a low month, then if you can be profitable with a low month, then any extra money on top of that will then go towards savings and retirement and all sorts of fun stuff. So there's a real opportunity to be lean here. Everybody else can use information from their paycheck or just come up with the best estimate that they possibly can. Okay, so if you have a side hustle, your spouses, your partner, we're all going to put those in the 3 columns set on that income worksheet. Next, as we move to expenses, so this is our defense, and they're broken into 4 different categories. We've got fixed monthly expenses, those are our monthly bills. We also have something that is often overlooked and it always kills our budget. They're annual expenses that pop up every year. And so sometimes we believe that, we had an emergency come up. What was your emergency? Christmas. It's like, that's not an emergency. Christmas comes every year. You should know this. Your registration for your car comes up every year. We need to take stock of this and add this to our budget now. So that's where we're going to really save ourselves some frustration and failure down the road by looking at that number 2, annual expenses. And then we're going to look at some variable essential expenses, which are car and food. And then everything else are going to be considered discretionary expenses. And so nerds, if you want to categorize everything down to toothpaste, you can do that. Everybody else, myself included, we are going to less categories is sometimes better, especially if you're moving towards the free spirit side. We're just going to try to group that into 1 or 3 buckets, make it as simple as possible so it's not as painful for you. So we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. Number 1, let's look at fixed monthly expenses. Everybody's going to be different. Everybody's going to have different monthly expenses. And so for my world, here's what pops up. Your rent, your mortgage, utilities, everybody has those. Auto insurance, phones, internet, TV. And then we want to think about subscriptions. So I know Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, all these things are subscriptions that we want to take account for. Fitness or health club. And those are going to be our monthly expenses. If you have other ones, please just go back and look at your previous month or previous couple of months, and you'll find the monthly reoccurring expenses. For the utilities, I know your electricity will fluctuate, and so again, we're just going to use our best estimate. I know we just had a cold winter here in Indianapolis, and so my electricity bill has been through the roof the last 2 or 3 months. And I'm looking forward to having a lower electricity bill once the weather gets warmer. But if you want to, after you've lived here for a while, you can actually call the utility company and they'll give you a fixed monthly rate for your utilities, which helps from a budgeting standpoint. And then we're going to start categorizing our debts. We're going to put these in a different spot on the expenses sheet, but these are going to be your auto loan, student loan, credit cards, medical loans, whatever debts you have, not mortgage related, not mortgage related. They're all going to go into the monthly expenses. Next, we want to think about annual expenses. So ones that come to mind are homeowners insurance or renter's insurance. If you pay taxes on your home, those will come up and invite you depending on where you live. And so we want to plan for that and make it a monthly expense. So it doesn't take us by surprise every 6 months when we have to pay $4,000 in taxes to our city or state. Auto insurance is another thing that I really encourage you to do. Pay that 2 times a year. Every 6 months, find a way to pay that up front. I ran the numbers before. It's an extraordinary return on what you get by just paying it all up front compared to how you would pay it over those 6 months, making a monthly payment. The return that I calculated, it was something like 80%, and there's just no such thing as 80% guaranteed returns in the world of finance. And so we want to take advantage of that auto insurance. And so other insurances, in my world, AAA insurance comes every year. My car registration comes every year. Amazon Prime membership comes every year. Those will get baked into my monthly worksheet as a monthly expense. And you can see the math there, annual amount divided by 12. And so if I'm paying $120 for, what was that? I had a car registration that was about $120. I'm going to divide that by 12, and it just goes into my monthly budget as a monthly expense of $10 a month. What else do we have? Oh, yeah, these are more, and that's why we want to capture these as much as possible. Christmas, holidays, birthdays, summer camps for the kids, annual trips, prescriptions and medical bills that we know about already. Car maintenance and repairs, we're going to put that into our budget so it doesn't take us by surprise or as emergency when my 10-year-old car out in my driveway needs new brakes. That should not be a surprise to me. And so we just need to take a step back and put that into the budget. And then, of course, the really important things like Butler basketball season tickets and school fees also need to be incorporated into this budget. Next, we're looking at groceries, eating out, and car. So I've noticed that groceries and eating out kind of go hand in hand. I have 2 separate entries in my budget, but you can lop it all into one category or 2, depending on how you want to do that. It's all food related. I like to flesh it out just to see in case I start eating out too much or start spending too much money on eating out. That's why I have that separate category, but it's all just food for myself and my family. And then finally, car is going to be around gas and oil to maintain your car. Some discretionary expenses that I have in my budget are home. So anything that goes to your home, which is home decor, home maintenance. If I'm getting fertilizer for the lawn, that all goes into home. Cash is something separate. I try to just take out just $100, and if I want to get a beer at the concession stand, then I just use cash for it, and I don't beat myself up for it. Clothing is another one. Gifts, my kids are just growing unbelievably quick. Can't keep them clothed. Gifts, entertainment, travel. I have like kids for soccer and for school expenses that I have as well. Medical, car. This is going to be for repairs and for maybe a new car if you have a car budget that you're saving for. And then I have a miscellaneous that I just sweep everything else under. I used to have like a book category and a hair category, and now you can see that I don't need a hair and don't get it cut very often. And so I just lop that all into a miscellaneous category and I call it a day. Not going to overcomplicate things. One last thing about budgets. Build some slack into them. As we're building our first budget, just take whatever you think and add, I would say, close to 50%. So what sometimes happens, we have the planning fallacy. So how many of you, when you've made a trip to work and it took you 20 minutes to get to work, that one day where you hit all the lights and there was no traffic and you made it in 20 minutes. And so you say, well, how long does it take to get you to work? And you say 20 minutes because of that one day. Well, in reality, it's more like 32 minutes or 35 minutes when you hit the lights and normal traffic. And so what I want you to think about is not the 1 month that you had a great spending month, but just add some slack into it. People tend to underestimate how much they will spend when setting out their initial budgets. And so we're just going to take a step back and just go, relax, let's add just a little bit, and we can always change it as we go in as we start tracking our expenses. All right, so our monthly budget is set, and yes, that is a fork in the road. So once the budget is set, we are going to determine our paths, and this is based on whether or not you are working on eliminating debt, or if you are out of debt and don't want to look back. And so for those of you who are still trying to eliminate debt, let's do it. We're going to go on the debt eliminator track, and I'll show you that program. And once you get done with that debt elimination, you come over to the wealth building track and we start that program over here. So here is the debt eliminator track. What we want to do here is first, set an emergency fund between $500 and $1,000. So by doing this, we've essentially have separated ourselves from over half of the U.S. households by having $500 to $1,000 set aside. So when you have to go to the emergency room, or if you need new brakes, or if your dryer breaks, you have something to cushion that fall. And it doesn't send you to the payday loan shark, or it doesn't send you to more credit card debt. You deaden the blow, and we just build that little buffer. And you can choose the number between $500 and $1,000, and we sock it away, and we leave it for a rainy day. And that is not Christmas. That is something, an essential, something breaks, a car breaks. That's an essential emergency. And then another thing we're going to look at is a retirement contribution up to an employer match. So in the United States, if you are working for particularly a larger employer, they might match you up to a certain percentage. Okay, so some of them might say up to 3%, we will match 100% of your contribution. That is 100% guaranteed return, which I've never heard of that in the world of finance. If somebody's telling you can get 100% guaranteed return, do not buy it. That's a lie. And so, but the retirement contribution, if your employer matches it, that is free money that we all need to take and we all need to participate in. If your employer matches 50%, I'm going to urge you to do that up to the amount that your employer will match. Okay, so anything beyond that, we're going to say, hey, let's set that aside and aggressively eliminate debt. And when we come back on the wealth building side, of retirement contributions, that's when we goose our contributions up between 10 and 15% per year. But everybody should be taking their employer match at the bare minimum. Once these first two, bronze and silver benchmarks are set, then we are going to eliminate debt. And I say aggressively eliminate debt because we don't want this in our lives anymore. I've been there. I've done that. I got out and I don't want to come back, and I'm trying to save as many people to bring them out of debt because I want you to have this feeling of freedom that I have. Okay, so we're gonna, if you have mortgage debt, that's fine. We're not gonna treat that. I am talking about credit card debt, auto loans, student loans, medical loans. We've got to get that out of our lives as soon as possible. Once we're done, we're going to move over to the wealth building program. One thing about eliminating debt, you may have seen Dave Ramsey talking about the debt snowball or whatever the hell he talks about. We're going to do something fairly similar. Priority list of extra payments. When we're eliminating a debt, we want to tackle credit card debt, and we are going to do smallest balance to largest balance. So unless you have a credit card that you're paying 150% interest and all of your other credit cards are paying 5% interest, that is the only exception around this. Besides that, we're just going to lop off the smallest balance, and then we're going to move that payment into the next one, and we lop that off, and we continue until it's gone and we don't look back. Same thing with consumer loans, unless, like I said, there's an outlier of interest. If you got 1.4 on one loan and you're paying 80% on another loan, then get the 80% loan out regardless of the balance. Let's use some sense here, but in general, we're going to try to go from smallest balance to largest balance when we're eliminating the debt. When we move over to the wealth building track, you're going to notice here the emergency fund expands, and now that emergency fund is going to be between 3 and 6 months of living expenses. And you can determine how many months you want for living expenses. So for myself, I have 3 months as I'm tenured and kind of qualify my job as somewhat safe. If your job is a little more risky and there's layoffs and you kind of know that it ebbs and flows, and you're going to want to err on the high side of an emergency fund in case you lose your job, and you can move that number up to 6 months. After that, we're looking at long-term savings. This is going to be a retirement contribution, 10% or more. Ideally, we want to try to see about maximizing your 401k contribution, which I believe this year is $15,500. And we want to set that up for the future. And now I am a big believer in retirement savings, but I'm also understanding we need some balance. But I also realize you can't redo retirement. You only get one chance to save for retirement. As much as I like to teach experiential learning and how to go, you only get one crack at this. And so we are going to prioritize our retirement contributions first before we start looking at other short-term goals for our savings. Once you've so if you have an emergency fund and a retirement contribution, now you can look at short-term savings. So this is either if you want to invest, have a brokerage account. If you are looking at saving for a house or your business, a cottage, these are the short-term savings goals that we want you to build into your budget. And so you can see here, we've got about 20 or more percent that we want you to save from your income. And then beyond that, we get into the diamond level. This is where you do college savings, $5,000 a year, and charitable giving. And so I put $5,000 in a year. That's an Indiana thing where between for all of your kids, if you contribute $5,000 a year, you get 20% of that directly back in your Indiana state refund. And so that's $1,000, 20% return that I'm willing to take. And the college savings up to $5,000, I split it between the two kids, and that's good. And so that's going to be different for each state, but definitely want to put that down here in the diamond category. Why is it not a silver category? And my answer is your kids, as much as we love them, they can pay for their own. They have a chance to pay for their own education. Unless they're going to fund our retirement with their college, that would be the only exception I would make to prioritizing their college savings over retirement contributions. So if you can have your cake and eat it too, that's where your diamond is. If not, we are still going to prioritize long-term savings over college savings for our kids. So this is our old Christmas story, the old bully. The budget is here to help you. It is not used to bully you. And so let's make sure we understand expectations for using this budget is just as a road. It's just to use as a roadmap. It's not to make us feel bad. It's not to give us anxiety. It's just here to help us understand our finances better. And so our budget will never be perfect, and that's fine. We still need to do this. And so I know with myself, my circumstances have changed. I've kept my budget now for over, I would say about 15 years now. So all through different phases of life, I still keep a budget. I still track everything. And now that I am recently divorced, I now have a completely different set of expenses that I am still calibrating. And so I understand my budget will never be perfect, and that's fine. We're going to constantly adjust and fine-tune our budget as time goes by. So here's where we're going to go now. We're going to begin tracking our expenses. And so all we do here is we set out what we thought we were going to spend, and now for the next 90 days, we are going to track the expenses and put the expenses into each of the categories. So at the end of 90 days, we'll be able to determine what needs to be tweaked and what needs to be moved. That's where we do our fine-tuning process, and we come back and talk about how things went, what we need to improve on, what went well, and then we continue our way forward. So this 90-day challenge is kind of like our P90X. Except for I want you, remember the old P90X exercises where everyone was getting really jacked up for P90X? And my question to them was, that's great. We want you to do the P90X, but what do you do on day 91? What, you start it again? You can't keep up that, sustainability. And so what I want you to think about is, let's really focus for the next 90 days. But we're going to really have a long-term perspective in mind of let's try to build this out in a sustainable way when we're creating our budget. So during the next 90 days, as we are tracking the expenses, we're going to start looking for some potentially unnecessary expenses. So the quote is my brain. When was the last time I watched Hulu? I think I'm paying like $5 or $6 a month on it, and I cannot remember the last time I watched Hulu. Might be time to eliminate or cancel Hulu. So these are the things that by writing it down, you go, oh, okay, I can eliminate this expense. Another thing you want to look for is possibly emotional expenses. So fill in the blank. When I have a bad day, I spend money at, it's probably not, you probably don't go to the gas station and fill up and get, premium gas when you're having a bad day. I know for me, if I'm having a bad day, I just go to Amazon. I'm buying stuff on Amazon, and it helps me feel better. But it's also something that is an expense that I have to really watch out for. So like I said, in 90 days, we'll come back and view the progress. We're going to update any of our savings and debt goals based on these updated numbers. And then at that point, we can solidify an achievable and sustainable long-term budget. So when we come back in another 90 days or another year, we can continue this process of fine-tuning. So again, we're not just going to do this for 90 days and be done. We're just going to develop this habit, and we're going to start this refining process of becoming more financially fit. All right. Can I use an app that tracks everything automatically? This is usually from one of my college students that says, we can track this in Mint or a couple of these apps, which are really cool. And I say, yeah, sure, use that. I'm okay with that. However, I still like tracking mine manually. Now, maybe it's just because I'm too old school, or maybe I'm just too nerdy, but I like to be able to go in and track my own expenses, because some of these expenses aren't always a one-to-one fit in a category. If I go to Kroger here down the street to get groceries, of course, that's groceries. But if I go to Amazon.com and spend $129, that can mean a lot of different things. Same thing if I go to Target or Walmart. I've got different categories that I want to put them in. I just like the flexibility of being able to input that and seeing the numbers update accordingly because, number one, I'm still a nerd. And number three is I like to manually input my expenses because it's a nice reality check after I go a little crazy and have an expensive week and spend a lot. It's that check of, okay, Brian, calm down. You had an expensive week. Let's throttle back and see if we can try to minimize expenses for the next week to, get some of these numbers back into the green and out of the red. And so as we start this journey and we're starting to track our expenses, the important thing is we're not doing this alone, that there are other people in the same situation that you are in. And so we've got resources for you on our website. We've got a podcast that we're going to be working on that talks about our lives, and it's a very personal thing. And we need to get into this together, and I'll share everything that I can with you and be as transparent as possible. And my hope is that it makes us all feel comfortable enough to be able to share this journey with each other. Know that there's a community with your colleagues at your work, your friends, your community, doing this all together in the name of becoming financially fit. And with that, I thank you. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I am going to now post the module for debt and trying to get out of debt. And then we have a fourth module called wealth building that I will do as well. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.